from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Coming up today, K-State's Lucas Haag will offer some considerations on striving for top efficiency in crop irrigation this summer. He touts the idea of irrigating more volume less frequently. Also today, on the latest edition of FSA Coffee Talk, Bob White will talk about adjustments that have been made in managing USDA loans for existing borrowers. Today's Kansas Wheat Harvest Update features Extension Agricultural Agents Marty Gleason of Edwards County and Jay Wisbee of the Central Kansas Extension District. Further ahead, K-State's Charlie Lee looks this week at the impact of turtles on aquatic life in farm ponds. All that here on Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Thanks for being aboard for another Agriculture Today on the K-State Radio Network. Good to have you along. Well, here we are entering, as of tomorrow, the month of July, and the hotter part of the year is still before us, drier part as well. And for you crop irrigators, your management abilities will be put to the test in these coming weeks. And so we've brought in today via phone Lucas Haag. Lucas is the area agronomist for Northwest Kansas, K-State Research and Extension, and has logged a great deal of research time looking at irrigation for maximum efficiency of water use and keeping that crop productivity motoring along at the same time. So, Lucas, producers, can they step back and evaluate where they are with their crop waterings now and maybe make some adjustments in their approaches?
Well, I think, there's several things we need to keep in mind, Eric. Certainly, the last couple of weeks out here in western Kansas, my gosh, the wind and the heat that we've had certainly a little bit earlier in the season than what we're accustomed to. And some areas have not received the precipitation really to help them out at all. And it's always important to, I think back to the 2011 drought in southwest Kansas and in 2012 over the broader area of western Kansas. And, we learned some pretty hard lessons in that and things that we knew, but really were illustrated during that time. And one of those things that really sticks in my mind is, we get really hot and dry. Some folks want to speed up their cycle times, go to a shallower depth of application of water, speed up their cycle times on their sprinklers, and with the idea that we're going to alleviate that crop stress better. And visually oftentimes it looks better because we're cooling that crop canopy. Stuff always perks up a bit right after an irrigation. But as we learned in 2011, and what we often see in this scenario is, it goes back to we got to think about our basics, and that is every time you irrigate, we're going to lose a fixed portion of that to evaporative losses. And so, say that, 20 hundredths, 25 hundredths, you shorten up a cycle time and put on a half an inch application. Well, now we're talking about losing somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of that. 30 to 50%, whereas if we can get an inch or if our soils and our slope allows it, an inch and a quarter type application, now that loss, that fixed overhead, if you will, becomes a smaller percentage of our total water applied. And that means we're getting more water in the ground, into the soil that can then be used by the crop.
So then it's a deeper, more infrequent schedule that one would go for here, in effect.
Absolutely. That's and obviously we got to be cognizant of, what are my conditions in the field? Am I no-till or strip-till with lots of residue and good infiltration and no slope? I'm going to be able to push that depth of application a lot harder than if I'm on highly tilled ground or sloping ground. And so obviously we got to make sure we're working within the constraints of, that particular field and its scenario, but as deep as we can go, is going to be much more efficient of getting water built up in that profile. As we saw 2011, when we went to those shallower, faster applications, the folks that did that just got further and further behind, and their corn ended up burning up faster, than the folks that were able to maintain some depth to their application.
What about, though, taking direct cues from plant condition and stage of crop? And, of course, this will vary considerably between crops, but things that producers can trigger their decisions on in that sense.
Sure. It's good to keep in mind what those critical growth stages are for yield component formation. And so I'll use an example right now. We just recently had an e-update article about cotton. Here in the last week or so, we probably would have had a lot of cotton in the state moving into match head square and kind of those first positions on the plant. And we had a 5-year study down in southwest Kansas at Moscow where we looked at timing of irrigation on cotton at critical growth stages. And by far and away, making sure that plant was well watered and happy at match head square was the most efficient use of our water. In fact, over that 5-year study, by applying just 1 inch of water at match head square, we were able to raise yields that were on average 280 pounds per acre more than what straight dry land would have been. 280 pounds of lint off 1 inch of water is a pretty darn good economic return. And so it's important that we take our cues from those stages, so match head square on cotton, because we don't want those squares to abort and be laying in the row. They're not going to make any lint if they're laying on the ground. Same thing on sorghum. We often talk about 30, 60, 90 days, and that is, differentiation at 30 days, and we're setting maximum potential head size. 60 days then right in the boot stage, and then 90 days late flowering into grain fill. And so making sure we're hitting those critical stages. For corn, of course, the 2 weeks heading into tassel silk. Oftentimes we think of, we want to be watered at tassel silk, and for sure we don't want the plant to undergo stress then, but we really want to be proactive in our irrigation strategy so that we have high levels of plant growth rate heading into tassel silk.
So those are some rather straightforward basics on scheduling irrigations at the appropriate time. Any other sources of efficiency, if you will, that an irrigator can take advantage of?
Of course, irrigation scheduling is something we've talked about for a long time, and we've got the Mesonet system and the CanSched tool, all products of K-State, where folks can manage their irrigation schedule that way. And along with that is, oftentimes out here in western Kansas, there's this belief that, I've got a low capacity well, irrigation scheduling, I don't need irrigation scheduling. And that's not always true. We forget that sometimes we do pick up some wet periods, we get some rains, and we do get those opportunities where we could shut the wells down for a few days. But if we're not actively engaged with irrigation scheduling or with the soil moisture probes, a wonderful technology, and those things, the soil moisture probes and irrigation scheduling, they're not replacements for each other. They very much can work hand in hand. The irrigation scheduling, we're going to be able to look at what's the crop using, and with our soil moisture probes, be able to look at what's in the soil. And those tools work very well together. And so even on our short capacity wells, embracing those technologies and techniques, there are opportunities to save some water and save some fuel when conditions allow.
And one other prospect here, Lucas, and mechanically speaking now, with the pivot, or if you're using flood irrigation, some producers still opt in that direction, making sure that water delivery is occurring as intended, i.e. troubleshooting the system from time to time. Is there merit in that?
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully already at the beginning of the season, went through and checked nozzles and everything. It never hurts to go through after some time, take your nozzle chart and walk the sprinkler and make sure everything's still on where you think it should be on. The other real important thing to bring up, especially producers that have some fields with any topography, pressure regulators do wear out. They do get old and get to where they don't function, or they can get bound with sand or other particulate matter. And so, those are items that do need replaced. There's sprinklers around that probably have 20, 25-year-old pressure regulators on them, and that's probably not giving you the pattern and the uniformity that you desire. And so that can be there's some cost to it, but in the grand scheme of things, for what I think you'll get out of more efficient application and thus either cost savings or improved yield, in the grand scheme of things, a new set of regulators isn't that big of a deal, but can certainly improve the performance of your system.
All right. But lastly here, this is the kind of summer that you think that our crop irrigators do need to amp up their management, it would sound, that because of the dryness and drought in some locations, and otherwise the pressure to keep those crops watered, you have to be on top of these things on a regular basis, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of areas of the state that have not been getting a lot of assistance from Mother Nature in terms of rainfall, and so it's easy to get behind in these hot, dry conditions. And so making sure that we're making good decisions management-wise and making sure that we've maintained our systems to where they're doing an efficient and uniform application of irrigation, all little. This is going to be a type of year potentially where little differences in management are going to show up quite big when it comes time to run the combine through it.
You bet. Once again, we would note that those tools that Lucas mentioned, CanSked and the others that you irrigators can utilize, can be found at the K-State Biological and Agricultural Engineering website. That is bae.ksu.edu/mobile irrigation lab, bae.ksu.edu/mobile irrigation lab. Lucas, good input as always. Thanks for taking a few moments to visit with us right here.
You bet, Eric.
Lucas Haag is the Northwest Area Extension Agronomist for K-State. He's based in Colby, of course, Northwest Kansas. Some thoughts for you crop irrigators on shoring up your management and meeting the challenge of what is appearing to be another hot and dry summer in many parts of Kansas, and how you can maximize your crop watering accordingly in these conditions. You are listening to Agriculture Today. Now, this break, when we come back, the latest edition of FSA Coffee Talk for you. We'll get into USDA Farm Loan particulars and what's changed there in the wake of the pandemic. This is the K-State Radio Network. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. This is the K-State Radio Network, and next up for you on Agriculture Today. Every other week, we set aside time to get you up to speed on what's happening with your Farm Service Agency here in the state of Kansas as it administers programs on behalf of you producers out there. We call this segment the FSA Coffee Talk, and joining us for the conversation this time around, the Farm Loan Chief with the Farm Service Agency State Office for Kansas. Bob White has been good enough to join us. Actually, this morning, he's spending time training new FSA personnel on administering USDA loans here in Kansas. So, Bob, once again, we appreciate you stepping aside from that to talk with us here. And before we get into the loan programs proper, we do know that it has not been business as usual at those local FSA counters around Kansas because of COVID-19. So you might visit with us about the status of that as producers would interact with those local FSA folk.
Yes, Eric. Great to join you. Glad to have the opportunity to discuss these things. Obviously, as you mentioned, our ability to continue to provide service to our customers during this COVID-19 episode is very significant, very important to us. At the national, state, and the local offices, we're continually monitoring updated COVID-19 reports, trying to attempt a balance of safety of our customers or employees, along with our desire to provide the best level of customer service possible. We are looking at these issues, these numbers on a county-by-county basis, making decisions based on each individual county information. So What we'd encourage customers to do is to contact or call our local FSA office and discuss with them what their availability is and what the recommendation is to us to customer service. It's obviously been new and different times for all of us, and we appreciate our customers working with us as we work through this situation, and again try to just find that balance, that equilibrium between providing customer service and do so as well in a safe environment.
It's been a good cooperative effort on the part of FSA personnel and the clientele that your folks serve. But we want to talk about the Farm Loan Program, and to this specifically, these have been tumultuous times, as you suggest, Bob, and there may be existing borrowers out there under the USDA Loan Program who are experiencing financial difficulties during the pandemic. The options that the FSA has to offer to those producers, you might go over that with us.
Yes, certainly. Obviously, that's very, very important to us as an agency, as I know all of our customers. We have an excess of 5,000 borrowers within the state here and nearly $1.2 billion in outstanding loans. So, we certainly have the opportunity to assist quite a number of customers, and all of those customers, every one of our customers I know is right now taking a look at and considering what the potential financial impact of the crisis might be on their own operation. When somebody's looking at this issue, our first recommendation is that they contact us, be in contact, discuss what options we might have available. We have some servicing tools that we've used historically to try to assist borrowers who are having some cash flow challenges. And then we're working closely with our national office. We've developed some additional opportunities, especially designed to assist operations during the current pandemic situation. We do offer both direct and guaranteed loans for our customers that have direct loans, where we've provided that financing directly. We've got a number of options. Those might include disaster set-aside. That would be moving the installment, a current installment, to the end of the note. We recently made some changes to this program to make it more applicable and more available to operations that are having issues with the direct result of the COVID-19 outbreak. Additionally, we can take a look at restructuring a borrower who's not yet delinquent but is financially distressed. That would be something like rewriting a operating type loan over a period of 15 years or a real estate type loan, maximum of 40 years from the original day of the loan, maybe doing some consolidating of some of the loans. Interest rates are certainly very low right now, and there may be the opportunity to provide some interest rate reduction while we're doing that restructuring option. If a loan is already delinquent, meaning the borrower was unable to make their scheduled in payment by the due date, then most of those customers will have received a notification of availability of loan servicing. The servicing options that we can consider under that notification are going to include those I've already mentioned, plus potentially some additional items. And, certainly would encourage anyone who's received that notification to take a look at the deadlines for receipt of the restructuring request and get with us and let us help them get that back in by the deadlines so they don't miss any of those important deadlines. And again, that will be within the notification we send out. So that's direct loans. Our guaranteed loans, we've advised lenders very similar options that they can provide to the customers under guarantee. And so if a guarantee customer has questions, certainly contact their lender. And of course, we're glad to try to assist the customer or the lender if there's some questions on what can be done on a guaranteed loan.
All right. So again, there's latitude for those producers who would hold either a direct or a guaranteed loan with the USDA currently and pursue those alternatives as Bob outlined them. But for those not holding USDA loans at the moment, but due to the pandemic, they may find it challenging right now, Bob, to obtain credit through the commercial channels. You are still standing ready to aid those producers should they express interest, right?
Absolutely. For an existing borrower or somebody that's a new customer to our loan programs, course, we first encourage interested applicants to discuss those credit needs with their commercial lenders. But if they're experiencing some limitations on obtaining adequate commercial credit through that commercial source, take a look at guarantee or a direct loan program, either one.
And you might remind us of how they work once more for those who are not acquainted with them directly yet.
Yes, our guaranteed loans allow a commercial lender to consider credit to a farm operator who may not meet the lender's normal underwriting criteria. A farmer or rancher would apply for the guaranteed loan through the local lender. Then that lender works with FSA to obtain the guarantee and allow them to continue to work with that customer, even though maybe the cash flow or collateral margins might be a little tighter than what the lender would normally be able to consider. Guaranteed loans can be used for real estate or operating purposes, and amounts can be up to $1,776,000. If someone's unable to obtain a guaranteed loan, then we can certainly take a look. Be glad to visit with them about the opportunity for a direct loan. We do make direct farm ownership or real estate loans as well as operating loans. The maximum farm ownership or real estate loan would be $600,000 under our direct loan program and $400,000 limitation on our operating loan program. Terms vary, repayment terms vary based on a number of factors, but typically operating loans need to be repaid within 7 years, and our real estate loans can't exceed 40 years. But again, whether it's loan making or loan servicing, the key to much of this is communication, and so we absolutely encourage those interested to reach out and visit with one of our local farm loan teams, see what options might be available. Of course, we tailor our services toward what that operation needs. Every operation is unique and different, and we want to provide the service that best fits that operation.
And once more, with the ongoing local protocols at the FSA service centers around the state of Kansas, folks need to check and see how that plays out locally, but those channels are open for doing business on USDA loans, and it's a matter of making a phone call or dropping an email to those local USDA service centers to explore the alternatives and the opportunities for securing a USDA loan for the various purposes that Bob described to us today. So, Bob, congratulations to you and your staff for continuing to forge ahead, business as usual, generally speaking, and making these loans available to producers out there. And thanks for the quick recap of those options before producers. Appreciate your time, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thank you.
Bob White with us. He is the Farm Loan Chief with the Farm Service Agency State Office for Kansas, based here in Manhattan. This has been the latest edition of the FSA Coffee Talk. We feature it every other Tuesday here on Agriculture Today. Now this break. When we come back, we'll have for you today's Kansas wheat harvest update. Two more of our Extension agricultural agents stand ready to provide that, as does K-State's Mike Brook. He'll bring us this week's edition of Milk Lines. And Charlie Lee on wildlife management ahead as well. Stay with us. This is the K-State Radio Network.
Social distancing slows the spread of coronavirus, so if you have a fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going in. More info at coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You are tuned in to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and on we go now to another wheat harvest update. Once again, we're enlisting the good help of our Extension agricultural agents from all around the state of Kansas, providing us notes on their harvest progress and results from their counties and districts. This segment begins with the word from Edwards County, an Extension agricultural agent there, Marty Gleason. Marty, you say the advance of your harvest was stalled out a time or two because of, rainfall.
Well, it was kind of a double-edged sword. We were getting pretty dry, so you never want to dismiss rain, but it's never convenient during harvest. We had really good test weights going up to the first rain, and of course, our test weights are still not too bad, but they did decline after that. The second rain we had was June 24th, and unfortunately, we had quite a bit of hail with that scattered through the county. So we've had rain and hail, but we're back in the field, and everybody's cutting today.
How much have you cut out so far, roughly speaking?
I'd say roughly we're about 60%, a little over half done.
So you say that test weights were doing pretty well prior to those rainfall events. Give us an idea of both where you were on test weights and on yields as well.
Okay. Early on, test weights were 63 to 65, was not uncommon. And so really, really good test weights. After the first rain, that kind of knocked down to more 61 to 63. Still, most of our test weights are above 60. So, not seeing the detrimental effects that we normally do. Yields, we were kind of surprised, kind of in the 50 to 60, better than we expected. Not record-breaking yields, but better than we had expected.
And you say that because you went into the spring thinking that this might be a marginal crop? What?
Yes, we did. You looked at the wheat. If you saw the wheat in March, it didn't look very promising. And after it headed, things just kind of progressed well, and we didn't have an abundance of moisture, but we had enough, and the weather was kind of right when we were filling, and things turned out much better than we thought.
Had you any numbers on protein that you were able to gather?
Protein has been the whole gambit. I mean, from like 9.8 up to over 15. But for the most part, I'd say protein is just going to be kind of average. Like I say, we've seen some really good numbers, seen some really poor numbers, and so kind of going to average out, I think, pretty much normal.
All in all, this has been chalked up as a successful harvest, it would appear, in your county.
Yes, yeah. We were pleasantly surprised. Good harvest. Like I say, it won't be a record harvest, but it'll be a good harvest, above average, and better than we expected.
Marty, thanks for taking the time right here to share what's been going on in Edwards County, which is a good story so far. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eric.
Marty Gleason, Extension Agricultural Agent in Edwards County, right on that borderline, if you will, between southwest and south central Kansas. Now it's on to our next part of the wheat harvest report for today, and this one will concentrate on progress in Ottawa and Saline counties. They make up the Central Kansas Extension District. Agricultural Agent Jay Wisbee is with us to tell us what's been going on harvest-wise. You do note, Jay, that your harvest was brought to a halt over the weekend because of rainfall and, in some locations, pretty hefty downpours.
Yeah, the northern half of Ottawa County received a lot of rainfall. Areas such as Delphus received as much as 6 inches of rain, so wow. We had actual flooding through our field. So the southern part of Saline County didn't receive as much, so they were able to go ahead and get started earlier than up north.
Up to that point, though, how far along were you with harvest in those two counties?
Yeah, I'm guessing around 40% done. We got started June 17th for maybe a day. People were just trying to find some dry wheat, and then some rains came in, and 6 days later we could really get to rolling. The middle of last week is the 24th, 25th, 26th. We got to running real hard, and then we got another rain event that slowed us up.
Up to the point where harvest was halted by rain, how was it looking? What were yields and test weights?
Yeah, yields have been pretty decent. I think most of them are in the 40 to maybe mid-60 range, would fit the vast majority. Test weights have been a little lower than what we're hearing from down south. Anywhere from 56 to 61 is about all I've heard for test weights. Overall, I think people have been slightly satisfied, actually. We had some frost earlier in the year, and we weren't super excited about our prospects going into this harvest. So.
Well, once again, you've harvest to go, and with those rains, what are you thinking, Jay, that the test weights might take a bit of a hit over the next couple of days, but otherwise the harvest will be pretty decent, rounding things out?
Yeah, weather-wise, it looks like we're going to go ahead and have a good open period here. The test weights, as you say, will probably take a little bit of a dip, and I'm hoping that we can get in the field and get the harvest completed here, as this week really looks like it's going to be lining up for real harvest weather.
Jay, thanks for the quick recap right here.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Jay Wisbee with us, Extension Agricultural Agent for the Central Kansas Extension District, those two counties, Saline and Ottawa. Now, this week's edition of Milk Lines. Here's K-State Dairy Specialist Mike Brook. Mike?
Today I want to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers about assessing heat stress on their farms. What I'm encouraging you to do is maybe consider using respiration rates as a way to measure how much heat stress your animals are exhibiting. For example, normal respiration rate for a cow would be 40 breaths per minute or less. When you're looking at heat stress, you probably, if you get up around 70, 75 breaths per minute, that's where animals are starting to indicate that they are experiencing heat stress. Now, in any group of animals, there's going to be some variation. So, measure the breaths per minute on about 10 cows. See where you're at. If you have more than 7 in that 10 that are 75 breaths or more, you probably aren't doing enough with your cooling system. And if you see 5 or more cows that have open mouth breathing in that group and respiration rates of greater than 100 breaths per minute, you're already into the severe heat stress for those animals. So evaluate your cooling systems. Make sure first that you have shade. Make sure that you have adequate airflow over those animals, and that really needs to be fresh air from the outside if possible. And then evaluate what you're doing either with evaporative cooling or feed line soaking systems. This is Mike Brook with K-State Research and Extension.
Thanks, Mike. And this is Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
Agriculture Today continues on the K-State Radio Network. Every Tuesday we bring by, in this time slot, Charlie Lee, Wildlife Specialist, K-State Research and Extension, to cover another aspect of wildlife management. Well, today's topic, Charlie, is turtles in farm ponds and the question that sometimes arises as to whether they can be a negative influence on farm ponds. More on that in a minute, but let's talk about their background and their habitat.
Turtles are one of the oldest still living groups of animals on the planet. They've been around for about 220 million years. Over that time, they've adjusted and adapted to living in many different environments. Those environments include completely terrestrial, semi-terrestrial, and aquatic, both freshwater and marine. The majority of ponds in Kansas have suitable habitat for turtles, as well as many of the streams that we have throughout the state. So if you have water on your property, most likely you have turtles. And the question I get is, what effect are they having on the ecosystem or on my pond? Particularly, how does it relate to my fish population? So in order to determine that, you've got to ask yourself what type of turtle you might encounter. The two most common types are sliders, both painted and red-eared turtles, and the snapping turtle is very common.
And they are found readily in just about any farm pond, or are they sporadic in where they inhabit?
No, common snapping turtles would be found throughout the state. They vary in their home range. They can move a short distance, but they also have long distances when ponds dry up and drought occurs. But it would be fair to say that most ponds that have been in operation for more than a couple of years probably have a population of snapping turtles as well as painted or red-eared sliders. So I think just because you have those turtles doesn't mean that you're negatively impacting your fish population. Mm-hmm. Slider's diet is primarily small aquatic insects and aquatic plants. So I think it's very clear that they might compete for resources with larval or very small fish, but there's no scientific evidence that says that those slider turtles are really impacting fish populations. I think the situation is somewhat different when you talk about snapping turtles. Snapping turtles are omnivores, meaning they're going to eat fish, frogs, turtles, mammals, mice, and plant material and detritus, decaying food that they find on the pond bottom. So their food requirements and their diet is vastly different than the slider turtles. Since they occasionally eat live fish, that's a concern for many people. But I think when you look at the evidence that's out there, they might have an impact on fish population, but it would be so slight to probably not be anything that would be significant. So I think the impact of turtles in ponds has to do with more of the recreational activities around that pond. Snappers can grow fairly large. I think 30 to 45 pounds would probably be the extreme range here in Kansas. And they have a very large, powerful jaw and sharp claws on their feet. They can be aggressive during the egg-laying period, and they're known to bite if they're provoked. So there could be a situation there where they're more of a concern for health reasons, really, than they are for fish populations. But by and large, I look at turtles as just a unique and very necessary additive to most farm ponds and don't see any significant impact on fish populations.
Well, you mentioned there the snapping turtle. They're not known for their friendly disposition necessarily. And there was new research on them specifically and their impact on the aquatic food web. What did that have to share?
Now, this was a report that was just published at Southeast Missouri State University, and they set up a food web where there was no top predators, and it included just phytoplankton and periplankton as the basis of the food chain or food web. And then they had two species of frogs, the gray tree frog and the southern leopard frog. Both species would be very common here in Kansas. That would have been kind of the control. Then they added bluegill to that situation in separate tanks. And then the other one had the two species of frogs, the bluegill as well as the common snapping turtle. And what they found on that, it was that predation by the bluegill reduced the tadpole survival for the tree frog in all of the food webs. And when they added the snapping turtle, it had no effects on the tadpoles of the gray tree frog. And the top predator reduced the mean survival and increased the mass of the southern leopard frogs when it was compared to the bluegill food web. So that would tell me that there is a slight impact in this sort of small laboratory situation, but that impact would be on frogs, not on the fish populations.
So once again, it comes back to there just not much of a negative consequence around farm ponds, either snappers or sliders.
No, I would say people should just appreciate the addition of turtles to their farm pond ecosystem and enjoy what they have rather than try to take management actions to remove turtles.
Information there on the activity of those primary turtle species, again, sliders and snappers, in farm pond settings. And Charlie, thanks for going over that with us today. Wildlife Specialist, K-State Research and Extension, Charlie Lee, with us. Well, that's our time once again. Looking ahead to tomorrow's broadcast, we'll visit with K-State weed scientist Vipan Kumar on a couple of topics. His recent research on controlling a highly problematic weed in post-harvest wheat stubble, that would be Palmer amaranth. You producers have been waging war with it quite a while now. Vipan will also discuss a survey that he's conducting of you growers to find out more about what weed challenges you face routinely these days. The results of that will serve as guidance for VPON's ongoing weed control research program. That and more right here tomorrow. Please be back with us then. Meantime, Eric Atkinson bidding you a good day for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.